It is a journey of hope through the warm weather of Africa to sometimes cold weather of Iowa to share the progress that African public and private leaders are making in decisively efforts to feed the continent and to transform Africa's agro-industrial sector. A story of how African political leaders, and you'll be hearing from them shortly, are taking decisive actions to feed the continent. It is also a journey and a narrative of how we are combining the power of science, technologies, policies, and politics to ensure that Africa fully unlocks its agricultural potential and feeds itself, and I must say, do so with pride. The title, From Dakar to Des Moines, Iowa, stems from the outcomes of the action-driven African Food Summit that the African Development Bank and the government of Senegal, together with the African Union, co-hosted in Dakar, Senegal, in January of this year. We called it Feed Africa, Food Sovereignty and Resilience Summit, or simply put, Dakar 2 Summit. The summit was organized by us, but attended by world leaders, including 34 African heads of state and government, the President of Ireland, over 75 ministers of agriculture, finance and development, central bank governors, and 12 heads of multilateral and bilateral development organizations. While much progress has been made in African agriculture, 283 million people still go to bed hungry in Africa, about a third of the 828 million people that suffer hunger globally. At the Dakar 2 Summit, we heard from African leaders that now is the time to feed Africa, that it was time that we start strategically talking about how to get Africa, which has 65% of the uncultivatable arable land left in the world, to feed the world. It was time to raise our ambition. It is a call echoed by no other than US President Joe Biden, who said at the US-Africa Summit that Africa has significant unused arable farmland that can be used to transform the continent's agricultural sector and food system. And President Biden went on further to say, Africa has the potential to feed its people and also to help feed the world. I schooled right here in the United States of America, went to good old Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. Some folks are probably here. But I can tell you, I've never heard a US president make that statement. Africa has the potential to feed its people and also help feed the world. Let's give it all to the President. Thank you, President Biden. Unlocking Africa's agricultural potential is at the core of the African Development Bank's Feed Africa strategy, which was actually launched here. You remember, Ambassador Quinn. Since we launched our Feed Africa strategy in 2016, along with several partners, we have supported over 250 million people to benefit from improvements in agriculture. At the core of our work is ensuring that we take technologies to the farmers. As Norman Borlaug always admonished us, he said, take it to the farmers. And we are doing so now at an unprecedented scale. The African Development Bank's flagship program, called Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or simply put, TAAT, has brought together the International Agricultural Research Centers of the CGIAR, national and regional research centers, seed and fertilizer companies, and agribusinesses to deliver climate-resilient agricultural technologies at scale. In just 4 years, the TAAT platform delivered heat-tolerant wheat varieties, drought-tolerant maize varieties, and high-yielding rice varieties to 12 million farmers, and increased food production by an additional 25 million metric tons. Working in close partnership with the CGIAR, TAAT is helping to create regional public goods to tackle hunger and malnutrition. And it is quite an amazing work that we are doing together with the CGIAR. In just 4 years, if you look at the work that has been done, TART's regional approach to technology transfer by harmonizing national and regional regulations in seeds and other farm inputs has meant a faster spread of technologies across agroecological zones and national boundaries. Of course, insects don't take visas, they don't take passports, and diseases don't go to an embassy to take visas. They go across agroecological zones, and what this does is, when you test a technology in one location, you should be able, and now you'll be able to make it flow horizontally across the agroecological zones. We've never had that before in Africa. In other words, technology is tested in one location, can move freely across agroecological bands, and can now be released at all countries sharing the same horizontal agroecological zones. In short, these are technologies without borders. Results have been astounding. When drought hit the Southern Africa region in 2019, TART came to the rescue. It deployed water-efficient and drought-tolerant maize varieties that came, of course, from the CGIAR, which were cultivated by 5.2 million farmers on 841,000 hectares. As a result, farmers survived the severe drought in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. In Ethiopia, and we will soon see His Excellency the President, TART distributed more than 100,000 tons of certified seeds of heat-tolerant wheat varieties. It expanded wheat cultivated area under irrigated lowlands from less than 5,000 hectares when it was all started in 2018 to 1.4 million hectares in 2022 and 2023. Wheat yields doubled from 2 tons per hectare to 4 tons per hectare. Ethiopia's wheat production increased by an additional 1.6 million metric tons in 2023. And I am, of course, so delighted to say that today it has made Ethiopia self-sufficient in wheat for the first time in its history. And it became an exporter of wheat to neighboring countries. TART is also boosting rice production. New high-yielding rice varieties from the program has been cultivated on 1.4 million hectares, impacting 3.2 million households. Now, this unprecedented progress was challenged by the Russian war in Ukraine, which posed risks to efforts to achieve food security in Africa due to dependence of many countries on wheat and maize imports from these countries, as well as fertilizers, all of which had increasing prices because of the war. The African Development Bank responded very swiftly to mitigate the effects on Africa by rolling out a $1.5 billion African Emergency Food Production Facility. We also got additional support from the United States of America, from Japan, from Norway, from Germany and Netherlands. I said at the time that Africa should not go around with bowls in hand begging for food. Africa should fill those bowls with seeds and plant the seed by itself and be able to feed itself and come out of this particular shock. This initiative is a comprehensive one to help smallholder farmers to replace a shortfall of 30 million metric tons of food imported from Russia and Ukraine, especially wheat and maize. Dear friends, the facility is now providing 20 million African smallholders with climate-smart certified seeds and fertilizers over the next 24 months. It is supporting them to produce 38 million metric tons of food, and that will be valued $12 billion, and that is 8 million metric tons of food, more than the 30 million metric tons of food that Africa will lose from its import from Russia and from Ukraine. Now, we needed to harness this change and do more. And therefore, as leaders gathered for the Dakar II summit, we were convinced that we now have the technologies to feed Africa completely. And since then, we have achieved incredible results. What is now needed is continued strong political will to decisively take the successes all across Africa and to fully unlock the continent's agricultural potential. Therefore, 34 heads of state and government did not come to Dakar with prepared speeches. They spoke from their hearts. And one of them said, we must remove the shame that Africa is unable to feed itself. It was such an inspiring moment, and one that I'm sure that our great hero, Norman Borlaug, will have been so happy to witness in the same manner that he witnessed the landmark Africa Fertilizer Summit in 2006 in Abuja in Nigeria. A major outcome of Dakar 2 was the endorsement of what's called Country Food and Agriculture Delivery Compacts, which provided action and outcome-driven plans to ensure that food security will be attained and to unlock agricultural potential in Africa within 5 years. We are mobilizing internal and external financing to implement these food and agricultural delivery compacts. And so I am delighted to share with you today that at Dakar 2, the development partners announced right there more than $30 billion to support the implementation of the food and agriculture delivery compacts. The African Development Bank itself would provide $10 billion over the next 5 years. Of course, things got better after the summit. Other development partners, many of them are here today, have joined in with further commitments, bringing the total support to over $70 billion US, an unprecedented global effort ever in Africa. And so as we roll out actions from Dakar 2 at country levels, we are also pushing regional operations to boost food production. Building on the successes of TAT, we are now rolling out what's called Regional West Africa Rice Development Program, or REWARD, a $650 million regional operation across 15 countries. It will help to increase rice production in West Africa by 7 million tons of milled rice per year by 2027, an increase of 40%. Similarly, through what we call the Climate Adapted Wheat for Africa program, a $100 million regional operation, we will increase and expand wheat production and trade on the African continent by 10 million metric tons per year, also an increase of 40%. This will be delivered, of course, through the doubling of productivity of off-season irrigated wheat on 2 million hectares of lowlands of East and Southern and Sahelian Africa. At the core of the food and agriculture delivery compacts from Dakar 2 is the development of what we call special agro-industrial processing zones, or simply put, SAPZs. We are investing heavily in the development of these SAPZs to support the development of agricultural value chains, food processing, value addition, and enable infrastructure and logistics to promote local, regional, and international trade in food. And yesterday, Ambassador Quinn was with us, Ambassador Branstad, where we had a fantastic event on this as a side event yesterday. The African Development Bank Group is investing $853 million in the development of these special agro-industrial processing zones. And it has mobilized an additional co-financing of $661 million for a total commitment of $1.5 billion. We are deploying effective partnerships at scale. We are currently implementing 25 special agro-industrial processing zones in 13 countries, and we have several of the partners here today this morning. For example, the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, provided $520 million for the development of 8 special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria. The second phase of that program aims to mobilize an additional $1 billion to develop special agro-industrial processing zones for 24 additional states in Nigeria. And in Ethiopia, we will hear shortly from My Excellency the President, the African Development Bank, the European Union, the Korean Exim Bank, and the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa are investing $198 million in the development of integrated agro-industrial parks. And a lot has been done to mobilize financing for businesses, especially small and medium-sized agribusinesses. The recent launch of the $100 million first loss by the USAID and NORAD of Norway, and I know Ambassador Minister Tuniveren must be here somewhere, of Norway, holds great potential to significantly de-risk equity investments for small and medium-sized agribusinesses, and we were together with Secretary Yellen and also with Ambassador Power, the U.S. administrator of USAID, together in New York when they launched this. And also the $85 million Agri-SME financing mechanism supported by the government of Canada at the African Development Bank, which was launched at Dakar 2 Summit, will provide affordable blended finance in terms of debt and technical assistance to small and medium-sized agribusinesses. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of agriculture, there is great momentum now in Africa. Dakar 2 to Des Moines today sends a clear and unmistakable global message that African agriculture is changing rapidly and offers huge opportunities for investors. The size of the food and agribusiness in Africa will reach a whopping $1 trillion by 2030. So invest in African agriculture and agribusiness. The political will is strong. The results on the ground show huge promise. Let's collectively seize the moment. Let's feed Africa, and by so doing, let's feed the world.